It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. It's time for The Verdict.
Hello there and welcome once again to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every Sunday morning to discuss current events and things that are topical, and we got a good show lined up today.
We do. I think all of our viewers, or many of them, have heard the term allied arts. I've heard it for many years and prior to kind of getting this show together, couldn't have told you what it really meant. But we've got a couple of guests this morning that are going to tell us about what allied arts means and what it is and what it does. Oklahoma City, as you well know, probably better than I or most of our viewers, is just very blessed with not only a large quantity of arts organizations, but a large quality bunch of organizations as well. Mm-hmm. For a city our size, we really, the arts are bountiful here, but they don't exist absent some financial support. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that with our guests when we talk about the term allied arts.
They fill a valuable role in this community, and we'll discuss allied arts when we return on The Verdict. Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guests.
Today we're really pleased to have two guests to talk to us about allied arts. Across the table from me is Donna Rinehart. Donna is the President and Chief Executive Officer of Allied Arts, has been for the past 6 years. Prior to that time, she was with the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce in various capacities and other similar organizations. She was recognized by the Journal Record newspaper as one of the top 50 women making a difference in Oklahoma. As a matter of fact, on a couple of occasions, so recognized. And this is her first visit to The Verdict. Donna, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
To my left is my partner. I disclose that right off the top. Michael Laird, who is a volunteer with Allied Arts as well as other arts organizations. Michael is a director, shareholder in Crow & Dunleavy Law Firm. Undergraduate work he did at Harvard, and we will give him a pardon for that. His graduate law degree came from the University of Oklahoma. He's been practicing law for about 25 years, is recognized, frankly, as a leading practitioner in the South and Southwest in real estate law and other areas. And this is Michael's second visit to The Verdict. Mike, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be back.
Donna, the first question's for you. What is allied arts? How do you explain that to the general public who might not be exposed to what your organization does?
Allied Arts is a nonprofit. We're a United Arts Fund. We were formed about 35 years ago from a spinoff from the Chamber. We were formed as a fundraising entity to go out and raise dollars, not operating dollars, for member agencies.
Okay, and what's the purpose of the Allied Arts? What role do you serve in the community?
The role we serve in the community is, as I said, to raise the hard dollar, and that's the operating dollars, for the member agencies, so that frees them up to go do the artistic things that they need to do.
Well, let me ask Michael this, and then I'll come to you, Donna. Mike, what do you do in relation to the Allied Arts organization? How are you involved with it?
Well, I've been involved for a number of years, both on the inside of Allied Arts and outside of Allied Arts, and I'll explain. I volunteered for the Allied Arts Drive for a number of years, but I've also been a member of the Board of Trustees of Ballet Oklahoma, which is one of the original member agencies, which has been benefited by this for, as Donna said, over 35 years. So I've seen it from both sides, and I continue to serve that role. For instance, this year I served as the workplace giving coordinator for our firm in the most recent campaign.
Well, Donna, I know you're President and Chief Executive Officer of Allied Arts, but can you be a little more specific on what you do on a day-to-day basis to carry out your duties with Allied Arts?
My job as the President Chief Executive Officer is certainly to manage the organization and to make sure that we're meeting community needs and that we're out in front of the community. The 20-member agencies that we allocate money to.
Yeah, and let me interrupt you just to say we'll scroll across the bottom of the screen the 20-member agencies so our viewers can know who they are. Go ahead.
Good. As the organization that raised the dollars for them, we have to allocate them too, and so we have financial oversight over those agencies. They make a grant application to us, and we make sure that that they're meeting community needs from an artistic standpoint, that they have education outreach, and so we have oversight based on the integrity of the dollars we raise.
Well, let me follow up with one more thing on that. You answer to whom?
A board of directors.
And who? You don't need to tell us who they are. I suspect it's a large board. Who's your board chairman?
Our board chairman this year, or the last 2 years, has been Zach Taylor, who is the Chief Executive Director of ACOG, which is American Council of Governments. Our incoming chair is Julie Hall, who's a community volunteer. And then our chair-elect is Mark Bunke, who's President of Bank of Oklahoma. So we have an executive committee of about 15 that meets on a monthly basis that sets our policies and procedures, and then we have a board of 80 that meets quarterly.
Who selects the members of the board?
We have a board governance committee that brings them forward to the executive committee and then to the board.
How do you know how much to allocate to each group?
There's a process that we go through. We look at there's a formula process, how much they participate in the campaign, what are their financial needs, and then we use a 3-year rolling average so that we're not hurting too many people's budget, though we can make sure they're raising their budgets. And there's an allocation committee, which volunteer driven, that set and they come in and do presentations and we review their grant applications, and it's through that process they're allocated their money.
And you have 20 groups. Is that number fluid? Does it go to 19 or 21, or has it always been on the increase, or have there been groups that came in and out?
Actually, the original 7 were there for like 28 years, so it's just been in the last 6 years that we've added the 13 new agencies, and they remain the same. Unless something happens to the agency and it goes away. But they remain the same as long as they meet the criteria to be a member agency.
Mike, I know you've been involved with Ballet Oklahoma in many capacities and in other organizations as well. Why is this a desire? Why is Ballet Oklahoma one of the Allied Arts organizations? What does it bring to this individual agency that's a plus?
Well, first let me say that Ballet Oklahoma and all the original agencies are very fortunate, as well as the new that were brought on here to make the 20 here a few years ago. We're very fortunate to be involved in this umbrella organization to be able to get significant funds for an operating budget. One thing that is often overlooked about the benefits of Allied Arts, which are both economic, but it's also fiscal oversight. They require very detailed reporting and auditing in terms of what we do as an organization. And I
Allied
say
Arts requires.
yes, in the grant application process Donna talked about. So it forces organizations to be very scrutinizing of their own economies, the programs they put on, what's benefiting, what's becoming in the community a benefit that is looked at the community as really being something people want to go to and watch.
I know, where does the funding come from?
It comes from a lot of different sources. It comes from individuals, it comes from companies, as I mentioned earlier. There's a large workplace giving campaign for many of the companies in Oklahoma City. It comes from a lot of different sources, and I know Donna has a broader scope as far as understanding where that really comes from.
If you looked at a pie chart for us and where the annual funding comes from, about 45% of it comes from corporate citizens. Another 40% comes from individuals, and then a smaller percent comes from foundations. Individuals being not only in the workplace campaign that Mike talked about, but also just individual donors within the community.
Well, now, just how does the campaign work insofar as would Ballet Oklahoma be, for instance, be soliciting funds at the same time the Allied Arts campaign is going on? Would they be going against each other for the same dollar?
Not during the Allied Arts campaign. There's a blackout month.
And what
in
time period?
February. February is the blackout month that the member agencies cannot do any fundraising during that month.
And is that the only time you do fundraising?
No, not really. We fundraise all year long, whether it's preparing to fundraise and allocate the money or whether it's actually doing the fund drive. But Allied Arts, February is considered Allied Arts Month, and that is the blackout period for the member agencies. They cannot raise dollars on their own for themselves. They have to work on behalf of the umbrella organization.
And that's a really important point, if I might chime in, because participation by members, in the case of Ballet Oklahoma, which is my direct experience, of the Board of Trustees, to become not only individual donors or corporate donors, but to go out and help raise money during this blackout period, but even beyond that, to have dollars go into the Allied Arts campaign. That kind of involvement is very important.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. We're visiting with Donna Rinehart, Michael Laird. We're discussing Allied Arts, and we'll do more of that when we return on The Verdict.
Rolling tape.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett and Kent Myers. Our guests this week are Michael Laird and Donna Rinehart. We're discussing Allied Arts, and we have a program that I'm not familiar with, and it's called Allied Arts at School. Donna, can you explain more about that?
Yes. About 3 years ago, we started a program called Allied Artists at School, and what that program is designed to do is to allow our member agencies, the Allied Art agencies, to apply for funding from us to go into the school systems. So many times the arts have been taken out of the schools, and so we saw that as an initiative that we needed to take charge of and at least allocate some money that could pay for those people to go into the schools.
Schools just in the Oklahoma City metropolitan area or beyond?
In the greater Oklahoma City area.
But I think the philosophy of arts and education goes well beyond that. Let me give you an example, and this is, again, ties back into Allied Arts and what Allied Arts has allowed, in this case, Ballet Oklahoma to do. Going back over the last 15 years, Ballet Oklahoma has done an outreach program in Oklahoma City, which buses in regular school buses from all over the state, from Guyman, from Idabel, every spring to come in and see a performance just for school kids of Ballet Oklahoma. And that, the Allied Arts has given the flexibility to this organization to be able to do that. The whole philosophy behind arts in the schools is something that's a common thread that's run through Allied Arts for years.
Mike, let me change the subject just a minute. I know that in preparing for this show and in prior years of being a donor, I know about the Allied Arts Star Card a little bit. Could you tell our viewers what we're talking about the Star Card program?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. Best thing I can say is it's in some ways a hugely unappreciated benefit of giving to Allied Arts. In its basic essence, if you give $45 to Allied Arts, you will get a Star Card. And that Star Card for a period of 1 year will allow you to get 2-for-1 tickets at a variety of different cultural, artistic, sporting events, cultural events throughout the community. It's an incredible bang for the buck, and people sometimes overlook that that benefit is there. It's also able to be utilized by families. You can pass it around. It's just a great benefit, and I know Donna has a better background on some of the amazing things that the Star Card can do for you.
What?
Well, as Mike mentioned, it is definitely 2-for-1 pricing for all the performing agencies, but it also allows you to buy sporting events such as Red Hawks and Blazers. You can get into the zoo and get 2-for-1 ticketing. All the museums you can get into. And then there's a lot of restaurants that have been added this year that give 10 to 20% discounts, as well as their arts classes that are on the Star Card for discounts. So we continue to raise the benefit of the Star Card. And at some point in time, we'll want to get into some kind of a multi-level Star Card, because that Star Card is a big focus for us.
Do people make the contribution of $45 or more, I take it, get the Star Card, and then perhaps give it as a gift or something?
It's a gift that keeps on giving, yes. That's a good tagline.
It is. It really is. There's no question about it.
It is.
It's remarkable. And the basic philosophy behind the Star Code when it first started was to get people to want to go because they could get 2-for-1 tickets to the original 7 agencies. It's blossomed well beyond that now, as Donna pointed out, going to multiple agencies, 20 now, but also to a lot of other events with the, again, the idea to be able to tie that back into the arts and cultural organizations, which is really what it's the heart of Allied Arts.
Well, help me out with where the United Way fits in with what you all do.
The United Way is the exact type of organization that we are. It's an umbrella organization for their 44 social service agencies.
So the United Way is just social service agencies.
Yes, yes.
And you're
arts
artistic.
and culture.
Yeah, okay.
Totally unconnected.
But you operate the same.
We
way.
operate exactly the same. We are the United Way to the arts, if you want to say that.
Well, why would an organization find it in its best interest to be a member and to subject itself to a blackout period where it can't raise money and subject itself to scrutiny on how it spends its money rather than just operate on its own? Michael, you've been involved at that level for a number of years. Why is that of benefit?
Well, there's the best way to say it is there's comfort and benefit in numbers, and because of the gravitational force that has developed around Allied Arts over the year,
What do you mean?
It is a consistent economic engine, if you will, for the arts organizations of significant amounts. While each organization still has to go out and have earned income from ticket sales, for instance, and unearned income from direct contributions to just their organization, Allied Arts is a huge safety net, if you will, for these organizations, and that's the benefit they get regardless of how their individual giving for their organization or their earned income may go from year to year.
I don't know of any other allied arts organizations in the state. Is this unique to Oklahoma City?
Yes, it is. We are the only United Arts Fund in Oklahoma. There are 65 United Arts Funds across the United States. Most of your major cities have a United Arts Fund.
Are you all grouped together or linked to any national
Yes,
organization?
we are a sub-organization under American for the Arts, which is the national group, and we're a sub-organization under them, which we meet annually and share best practices and do development things through American through the Arts.
Does any funding come from them to
No,
Oklahoma City?
Not at all.
Let me ask you a question about the money you raise annually. When you've been now in your position 6 years, how has the amount of money that you've raised changed from year to year since you came?
When I first started in September of '99 at Allied Arts, we were just coming out of a campaign that raised just over $1 million, and we're moving very closely to $1.7 million this year. So we've grown dramatically, but we've grown dramatically also in who we serve. So that would make sense for us to grow.
Well, you've grown from 7 organizations to 20. And from approximately $1 million to approximately $1.7 million in 6 years.
Yes.
What's your hope, Donna? Where do you see the Allied Arts organization being 5 years from now in Oklahoma City?
From a strategic standpoint, Allied Arts already has a tool in place that will take us to $2 million within the next two to 3 years. I would like to see us sustaining that, and then eventually this city would go to a $2.5 million campaign.
Just the idea of the scope. Is your funding the majority of the funding that these organizations get, or a small part, or how much do they have to rely on your funding?
Let's just look at the Philharmonic, for example.
Okay.
We are their largest contributor annually is to their operating dollars. We raise anywhere from 5 to 20% of their total budget, okay, depending on the size of the organization. But their contributed dollars were the largest contributor.
Okay.
For instance, for Ballet Oklahoma, just to give another perspective, budget last year was approximately $1,150,000. Allied Arts, I think the last year was 130,000.
About 139.
139,000 with that's right with the additional. So that gives you some idea of the
10%.
relative. It's a huge, significant amount, but it is not. It is not, for instance, the majority of any of these organizations. They have to live and breathe and operate on their own.
What kind of criteria does the board or the decision makers on who gets what and how much, what kind of criteria do they use to determine how much any individual organization will get?
Well, based on history, a lot of it, because that's, we look at a 3-year rolling average, but they look at, as we discussed earlier, the financial stability. They have to meet certain criteria based on that. They look at their outreach programs, and if they're meeting the community needs, and if they're mission-based and they're well organized.
And the quality of the product.
Quality of the product.
That's right.
Very important.
So if there's one message we want to leave with the audience is to get a Star Card and support the Allied Arts and take advantage of all the offerings that they have in the arts community here.
Most definitely.
Absolutely.
Michael Laird, Donna Reinhardt, we appreciate all you're doing for Oklahoma City, and we'll give some website information when we return on how people can get more information, how they can get more involved in what's offered in the arts in Oklahoma City. We'll be right back. Hey, the quotes you came up to this week are a little over my head. You may have to explain some of those to me later.
Well, they were all classmates of mine that gave those quotes, so I'll try.
We've been discussing the Allied Arts with Michael Laird and Donna Reinhardt. Really good show.
They are fine people, but very effective at what they do. As we said at the outset, Oklahoma City is indeed blessed with really a large number of quality arts organizations that make a wonderful impact in the community from the cultural standpoint. I think you have a little bit of information about the economic impact.
Well, yeah, the last study they did indicated that there was a $485 million economic impact to Central
Annually.
Oklahoma annually. Yeah, that's pretty large.
Well, that is huge. Well, speaking of large amounts of money, next Sunday we will be proud to introduce once again to our audience Scott Meacham, who wears a different hat than he did when he was on before. He is our new state treasurer, and we'll be talking about his duties.
Give you some website information on the Allied Arts. It's alliedertsokc.com. And of course, our website, theverdict.tv. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.